Imagine waking up one summer morning and seeing the sky torn apart by fire. Trees flattened for miles, but no crater. No impact site. No explanation. Welcome to the Tunguska mystery, the world's biggest explosion you've never heard of. Stick around as we uncover the chilling secrets behind the 1908 Siberian blast that shook the Earth and still puzzles scientists to this day. If you're into unsolved science, wild theories, and real-world X-Files, hit that like button, subscribe to Infinity, and let's dive deep into one of history's loudest mysteries. It was June 30th, 1908. A quiet, ordinary morning in the remote Siberian taiga near the Tunguska River. Locals were going about their day, herding, hunting, living in a vast, wild stretch of forest. Then, without warning, the sky lit up. A brilliant blue-white fireball streaked across the horizon, tearing through the atmosphere. Eyewitnesses described the light as brighter than the sun. It moved silently at first, fast, majestic, terrifying. Then came the explosion. A shockwave so violent it knocked people off their feet hundreds of kilometers away. Windows shattered. Horses collapsed. One man was thrown from his chair. Entire forests, trees miles wide, were flattened like dominoes. Indigenous Evenki hunters fled in panic. Their reindeer bolted. One man said it felt like the earth itself was being torn apart. The sky burned for hours. The explosion was heard as far away as England. But the center of it all? Completely unreachable for nearly 2 decades due to the remoteness of the region and the chaos of Russian politics. What's insane is this: the Tunguska Event released the energy equivalent of 10 to 15 megatons of TNT. That's nearly 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And yet, no crater. No impact site. No obvious meteorite fragments. Just 80 million trees flattened in a radial pattern, like some invisible giant had swatted the land from above. At the time, the world was barely paying attention. The Russian Empire was teetering toward revolution. News spread slowly. And without any quick access to the epicenter, people assumed it was just some freak natural event. But years later, scientists would ask a very different question. What the hell happened in Tunguska? Over time, the mystery grew. The more people investigated, the weirder it got. The location was too remote to study properly until 1927, almost 20 years after the event. When the first expedition finally reached the site, what they found was baffling. No meteor. No crater. Just destruction. Trees at the epicenter were scorched but still standing, while the surrounding forest was flattened outward, as if something exploded just above the ground. It was unlike anything seen before. A blast that came from the sky, but never touched it. The scientific community had theories: a meteor airburst, a comet fragment, a volcanic gas release. But none of them quite fit. Something didn't add up. And as Cold War paranoia and UFO fever grew, so did the wild speculation. But one fact remained stubbornly clear: something exploded over Tunguska that morning. And the Earth had no idea how to explain it. That's where the mystery begins, and where our story starts to unfold. In 1927, Soviet scientist Leonid Kulik led the first official expedition to Tunguska. He was a mineralogist, obsessed with meteorites. When he heard stories of a fire from the sky, he knew it was worth investigating. But what he found wasn't what he expected. Kulik's journey was brutal. Harsh weather, swampy terrain, and a lack of infrastructure meant it took weeks just to get close. When his team finally reached the blast zone, they were stunned. The devastation stretched across 2,000 square kilometers. The trees had been flattened outward from a central point, like the ripples from a bomb. But bizarrely, at the very center, some trees still stood, limbless and scorched, but upright. This pattern was unlike any known meteorite impact. Kulik searched for fragments: metal, rock, glass, but found nothing. No crater. No impact hole. Just marshland. The team dug, prodded, mapped. Nothing. It was like the Earth had swallowed the evidence. Kulik theorized it must have been a stony asteroid that vaporized in the atmosphere before impact, creating a massive airburst. But even that didn't explain the complete absence of debris. It was like it had simply vanished. He returned in later years with more expeditions, but always hit the same wall. No physical remnants. No conclusive proof. Just flattened forest and one massive question mark. The Tunguska blast didn't act like a typical meteorite impact. It was too powerful, too clean, and too mysterious. The Soviets began to wonder, could it have been something else? As the decades passed, new technologies brought fresh perspectives. Satellite imaging, radiocarbon testing, and tree ring analysis all told the same story, an event of apocalyptic magnitude, but no fingerprint. Meanwhile, conspiracy theories began to swirl: UFOs, antimatter bombs, Nikola Tesla's death ray. We'll get to those. But for now, the puzzle stayed unsolved. And that drove scientists and theorists to keep digging. The most accepted scientific explanation today is this: a meteoroid, about 50 to 60 meters wide, entered Earth's atmosphere at high speed and exploded mid-air around 5 to 10 kilometers above the surface. This kind of event is known as an airburst. It doesn't leave a crater because the object never hits the ground. It disintegrates in a massive explosion due to the sudden increase in pressure and heat. The 2013 Chelyabinsk meteor in Russia gave scientists a real-world test case. It exploded in the air with about 500 kilotons of energy, injuring 1,500 people. But it was only a fraction of Tunguska's power. If a stony asteroid or icy comet hit at just the right angle and speed, it could explode in the air without touching the ground. Simulations show that such an event could indeed flatten trees and cause heat and shock damage like Tunguska's. But still, questions linger. No fragments were ever found. No iridium, no cosmic dust in high enough concentrations. And the symmetrical tree fall pattern? Unusual even for an airburst. Some scientists believe the object could have been a comet, mostly ice and gas, which would have vaporized completely. But comets are rarer visitors and harder to predict. Others argue for a carbonaceous chondrite, an ultra-fragile type of space rock that would leave minimal debris. Still, it's an open case. Researchers also examined tree ring anomalies. Many trees near the blast zone show abnormal growth starting in 1908, proof of radiation, heat, and stress. But the origin of the radiation remains debated. There's even a magnetic anomaly at the site, suggesting some exotic interaction with Earth's magnetic field, which opens the door to more speculative ideas. So while mainstream science leans meteor, the lack of hard evidence leaves just enough room for the unusual. Let's step into the rabbit hole. Because the Tunguska event has attracted every kind of fringe theory you can imagine, from the plausible to the straight-up sci-fi. First up, UFOs. Some believe Tunguska was a mid-air crash or explosion of an alien spacecraft. The symmetry of the damage, the lack of debris, and the sheer scale all feed this idea. Russian science fiction writer Alexander Kazantsev popularized the UFO theory in the 1940s. His story described a Martian ship exploding to avoid a crash. Wild. Sure. But it stuck. Then there's Nikola Tesla. In 1908, he was experimenting with wireless power transmission from his Wardenclyffe Tower. Some claim he accidentally fired a beam at Siberia, causing the explosion. No proof, obviously, but it keeps popping up. Another theory, antimatter. If a chunk of antimatter collided with normal matter in the atmosphere, it would annihilate in a massive burst, with no debris. Problem is, there's no natural source for antimatter chunks. Wormholes? Mini black holes? Cosmic rays? You name it, someone suggested it. The lack of solid evidence invites speculation. And let's be real, we humans love a good mystery. One of the eeriest ideas comes from the concept of mirror matter, a theoretical form of invisible matter that could interact gravitationally, not electromagnetically. If such an object exploded, it might leave no trace. All these theories lack hard proof, but they reflect something important. Tunguska isn't just a scientific mystery, it's a cultural phenomenon. It's become a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that even in the age of satellites and particle accelerators, the universe can still surprise us. And perhaps, warn us. Here's the sobering truth. Tunguska wasn't a one-time fluke. Earth is hit by space objects all the time. Most burn up. Some explode mid-air. A few, like Chelyabinsk, cause real damage. But Tunguska? If that happened over a city today, it would be an extinction-level event locally. Millions could die in seconds. And the scary part? We didn't see it coming. NASA tracks thousands of near-Earth objects, NEOs. But smaller ones, like the Tunguska rock, are harder to detect. Some could sneak up on us with little warning. In fact, Chelyabinsk wasn't spotted until it exploded. It came from the direction of the sun, blinding telescopes. We got lucky. Tunguska-level events happen every few hundred years. That's not comforting. Today, astronomers are calling for better funding for sky surveys, space telescopes, and planetary defense systems. Because next time, we may not be so lucky. There's even talk of asteroid deflection missions, using rockets, lasers, or even gravity tractors to nudge dangerous objects off course. Tunguska was a wake-up call. But it took a century for us to realize what it really meant. We live on a cosmic shooting range. And the targets aren't always big enough to see. But history remembers. And Tunguska whispers, stay ready. More than a century has passed since that morning in 1908, but Tunguska remains a riddle. It sits at the intersection of science, mystery, and myth, an unsolved puzzle the size of a small country. Scientists continue to analyze data, run simulations, and debate theories. New expeditions still visit the site. But the definitive answer? Still out there. Tunguska changed how we think about space threats. It inspired asteroid monitoring programs, emergency planning, and planetary defense initiatives. It also inspired generations of thinkers, scientists, writers, filmmakers, to imagine what else might be out there. It's proof that Earth is vulnerable. That nature doesn't care about borders, politics, or time zones. It reminds us that in a split second, everything can change. From clear skies to chaos. And yet, there's beauty in the unknown. The Tunguska event is not just a disaster story. It's a call to explore, to question, to never stop learning. Maybe we'll never know exactly what happened that day. Maybe that's okay. Some mysteries are meant to humble us. But one thing's for sure, Tunguska is a legend written in fire. And its echo still vibrates across the world. So if the Tunguska event has taught us anything, it's this: the universe doesn't knock before entering. Want more untold true stories and science that hits like a meteor? Subscribe to Infinity now. Drop your wildest theory in the comments. And remember, truth is often stranger than fiction.